I want to begin by stating that all of our members of this committee are in full support of the men and women who every day work to keep our nation safe at the FBI and the Department of Justice, and we condemn any actions of violence against any law enforcement personnel. Having said that, we have serious questions concerning the actions taken by Director Wray and ordered by Attorney General Garland to raid Mar-a-Lago and the personal residence of Donald Trump. Both of them are subject to oversight by Congress, and it is our job to ensure that they are not abusing their discretion or politicizing the powers that we have given them. Earlier this week, we requested that they disclose to our committee the national security basis upon which that they have ordered this raid. Because many other options were available to them, we're very concerned of the method that was used in raiding Mar-a-Lago and the 9 hours that it transpired while they were in the former president's home. Now, we are glad that Attorney General Garland has begun the process of releasing some of the information to the American public, and the American public deserve answers, and certainly our responsibility as Congress is to make certain that we provide appropriate oversight. They will be releasing apparently the warrant and the inventory, but it will still leave many unanswered questions. That's why our request remains that the Director of the FBI and the Attorney General disclose to this committee the imminent national security threat upon which they based their decision to order a raid upon the president's home, again underscoring that there were many other options available to them. We believe that after the release today that these questions will still remain unanswered. We are requesting that the chairman of the committee support our request for the disclosure of this information to our committee. And we are requesting that it be backed up, if they do not comply with our request, by a subpoena from our committee. Our committee is intended to work with classified information. There's nothing that would be the subject matter of this that cannot be disclosed to our committee. And we also are the committee that deals with the issue of national security threats, and we want to know what was this imminent national security threat upon which this was based. Next, we are also very concerned about the disturbing reports that there was an informant, perhaps someone even undercover, at Mar-a-Lago or around former President Donald Trump. And today we are also sending a letter to Director Wray demanding that he disclose to us the process by which that informant was utilized or that informant was placed. What is the relationship between the FBI and the person that has reportedly been utilized in this process? Now, we have a number of members who are going to speak. Each of us come with a background in national security and issues of classified information. This is an issue that requires oversight, and we're going to continue to demand this information. At this point, I would like to turn it over to Brian Fitzpatrick.
Thanks, Mike. Brian Fitzpatrick from Pennsylvania, former FBI agent. I want to start by saying, no matter what angle you're looking at this from, this is a tough time in our country. We have too much distrust in too many of our institutions that are at the fabric of our democracy, and our country simply cannot survive a perpetuation of that distrust. We got to fix it across the board. It's incumbent upon all of us to do that. Just a couple of things I wanted to address as far as like how at least I think most of us are processing what our role is right now going forward. Number one is looking at the legal justification. So at some point, possibly today, possibly in the days to follow, you're going to see the release of both the warrant, which is a top page. You're going to see beneath that potentially a rider of items to be seized and areas to be searched, and then the property receipt that the evidence response team, the investigating agents, would have filled out and returned, left a copy at the residence and returned to the court. If it's redacted, which I suspect it will be, don't expect it to glean too much other than the statute they're investigating, potentially 1924 and or others. The real story will be with the release of the affidavit itself, which is not currently planned to be released. It is filed under seal. The prosecution does have to repeatedly go back to the court and ask that it remain under seal. there is a baseline presumption that that document be released to the public in the interest of transparency. That's what's going to tell us really what most of us want to know. Second is the tactics that were used. There is a continuum of options available to any agency that's enforcing the law, from non-invasive methods like the passive service of a subpoena with a production date and or appearance date, all the way up to the most extreme, which would be the execution of a search warrant. There's a lot of steps you can take in between. For example, forthwith subpoena, where you would show up, serve a subpoena, but demand instant production then and there. The Bureau and the Attorney General and the DOJ obviously made the decision that this extreme measure was necessary. We will await their rationale as to why that extreme measure was justified and not some lesser intrusive means. The next thing that I think we all need to look at is the parity in the enforcement of the law. We've seen many cases involving national security information, Sandy Berger, Hillary Clinton, and the like. The public needs to know that the law is being enforced equally when the circumstances dictate. And then lastly, something that I'm concerned about, which is why we want to get to the bottom of this, is the impact that this perpetual distrust across a lot of these institutions is going to have, in this case, on our national security apparatus. As FBI agents, we cannot do our job. I'm a former agent, obviously. We cannot do our job without the support of the public. That's the core necessity to keeping our country safe, and FBI agents, DEA agents, all the agents doing their job. We have to be able to go to the public, recruit sources, have sources introduce undercovers. We needed to be able to knock on someone's door, and when we show them the FBI badge and credential, that they respect it, that they invite us in and they share information with us. That's how we kept our country safe. If we ever get to a point where we lose the faith of the public, it impacts all of us. It impacts our national security. And that's what we're trying to get to the bottom of here. It's in all of our interests to do it. As Mike said, we love our law enforcement officers. We would protect and defend them. We thank them for their service. But when we have a brewing matter of distrust, we have to get to the bottom of it and fix it. Not just for the sake of this individual instance, but for the sake of our counterterrorism cases, our counterintelligence cases, our cybersecurity cases, all of the critical cases that all of our federal law enforcement agencies are working on to keep us safe. So with that, we will invite our conference chair, Elise Stefanik.
Thank you, Brian. Elise Stefanik, House Republican Conference Chair, Representative for New York's 21st District, member of House Intel and House Armed Services Committee. House Republicans are committed to immediate oversight, accountability, and a fulsome investigation to provide needed transparency and answers to the American people regarding Joe Biden and his administration's weaponization of the Department of Justice and FBI against Joe Biden's political opponent. President Donald Trump is Joe Biden's most likeliest political opponent in 2024, and this is less than 100 days from critical midterm elections. The FBI raid of President Trump is a complete abuse and overreach of its authority. And as the American people know, unfortunately, this is the same agency leadership that protected Hillary Clinton, James Comey, and continues to protect Hunter Biden. The same agency leadership that perpetrated the false Russia hoax for years. And it's not just these national issues that have led to historic distrust among the American people. It's local issues as well. Like in my district, the FBI's leadership overreach and politicization continues to occur. The FBI continues to stonewall a critical investigation. They're stonewalling providing information and transparency into their role in the deadliest car crash in recent years, where they mishandled a longtime FBI informant. And while some of you national reporters may not know this issue, for reporters in the media in my district, this is one of the most important FBI issues that we're facing in upstate New York. But the American people are smart, and they have had enough. It is unfortunately why there is a fundamental lack of trust in these agencies, and the American people deserve answers. A House Republican majority will leave no stone unturned when it comes to transparency and accountability into the brazen politicization of Joe Biden's DOJ and FBI targeting their political opponents. And with that, I yield to my colleague, Brad Wenstrup from Ohio.
Thank you, Elise. First, being from the Cincinnati area, I want to just take a moment to condemn the attack on the FBI headquarters that we saw yesterday. I can tell you as a group and personally, we condemn all types of violence. whether it's something like this, violence that occurred in our cities a couple summers ago, violence at the Capitol, and violence at the baseball field 5 years ago. I will be putting a call into my friends at the FBI headquarters in Cincinnati and check in on them. We support them. We all know that we have thousands of dedicated patriots working within our agency to try and do the right thing. I'm a physician, Iraq veteran. I grew up watching a TV show on Sunday nights called FBI. I love the FBI. I had such respect for the FBI. But we have concerns today. We have concerns today primarily in the leadership. I'd like to say that those concerns are not the feelings of every American or the majority of Americans, but it is. It is, and I'm hearing it from both sides of the aisle. They are worried about the weaponization, the politicization of the DOJ and the FBI. This raid is unprecedented. We want answers. We deserve answers. Because you see, we are a government of the people, and we are the representatives of the people. And on behalf of our citizens, we are here to have oversight. No agency in our government is its own standalone government. Accountability must be there. Transparency must be there. I want to frame a scenario that's consistent with so much of what we were dealing with and talk about what happened at the baseball field 5 years ago. June 14, 2017, a heavily armed assassin, clearly by his social media and other things he wrote, was motivated politically. He hated Donald Trump. He wanted to kill Republicans. He had names of Republicans in his pocket. He was outside that baseball field for 2 months watching us. Before he launched his attack, he asked 2 members of Congress that were leaving early whether this was Republicans or Democrats. Most people don't know 136 rounds were fired that day. Steve Scalise took a bullet for all of us. If he wasn't there, Capitol Police would not have been there to defend us that day. The Capitol Police were in unmarked vehicles and undercover clothing. 5 people were hit, including both Capitol Police. And it's really by the grace of God that we survived. But without them being there, you have in a situation where this man singularly could have killed 20 to 30 members of Congress and staff, changing the balance of power in the United States House of Representatives. Folks, that's an insurrection. And it was a clear assassination attempt. He came heavily armed. And I know, because I was there, and so was Mr. Kelly, who you'll hear from as well. He had his hit list. He knew what he was doing. Despite all these facts, on November 16, 2017, FBI personnel came to those of us that were there and told us, we just surmise that this guy wanted to commit suicide by cop. If your jaw doesn't drop with that assessment from the FBI, it should. And as we said that day, you want suicide by cop? Pull a gun on a cop. It takes 1 bullet. It's over. 136 rounds were fired. So I tell you all that because I think it's important that you also know the scenario and also know that the FBI did not call any of the Republican members, those of us that the man tried to assassinate, in making its determination. Not one of us were questioned by the FBI, the leading investigative body in the United States of America. So you want to know why American people don't trust our institutions? It's things like this, because the decision they made defies logic. Fortunately, this committee finally had a chance to address Christopher Wray, who, by the way, was not the director of the FBI at that time on June 14, 2017. It was Andrew McCabe. You all know who Andrew McCabe is. You know his association with the Russian collusion hoax. We finally had Christopher Wray, after 4 years, painted the scenario and asked him how the FBI could come to that conclusion. To his credit, he reviewed the case and changed that narrative to domestic violent extremism. But it doesn't end there. So, and I do want to share too that, you know, you had all these other agencies, Alexandria Police, etc. They were very clear on what this man did. None of them considered it suicide by cop. Not one agency, just the FBI from the top. We're in a situation now where we in this committee, where we have oversight, we are the entity, and as taxpayers, you all are the ones that fund this agency. We're the ones who created this agency. We have a responsibility to have oversight over this agency. And so, in review, we have said, we want to have some lessons learned here. How did you get it so wrong? Why did you get it so wrong? Did it come from the acting director? So we want to know how, why, and by whom these mistakes were made. We need access to the case file to answer these questions. And the FBI has been unwilling to share this file with us, which we have every right to see. These agencies serve us. They serve us, the people, not just us here, but all of those that we represent across this country. It's not the other way around. And we cannot be denied oversight by the very agencies that we created, that we fund, and that we want to trust. We want the American people to trust our agencies. So we're here to provide oversight and accountability. We need the FBI. This country needs an FBI. It's part of truth, justice, and the American way, but not when it's in the cover of darkness, and not when we don't sense honesty and transparency. We created the FBI for a reason. We want them to do their job for the reason that it was created and to work with us. And with that, I'd like to turn over to my colleague, Trent Kelly.
Thank you. And I'm Trent Kelly. I represent Mississippi's 1st District. I'm a member of the Intelligence and Armed Services Committee and Agriculture Committee. And I just want to say that the scales of justice should be balanced, and the eyes of justice should be blind as to who you are politically. I want to be very clear. The rank and file members of the FBI and our Department of Justice, they are brave men and women who do their job every single day. I think they're doing an incredible job. However, the 7th floor, the leadership of the FBI and the Department of Justice have been politicized in the eyes of most Americans. And I want to say that perception is reality. And so it doesn't matter if you're doing right if people perceive that you're doing wrong. And the only way to change that perception is through transparency and allowing people to know that what you are doing is right in the eyes of justice and that the scales of justice are balanced. As with the baseball shooting over 5 years ago, I was there. The perpetrator is dead. However, to this day, the FBI continues to use cover-up and hiding and will not disclose the files even though the perpetrator is dead. We have yet many, many requests. As a victim and as a member of the Intelligence Committee who oversees that, we have the right to see that investigation, but we have been denied that request after request after request. And I don't need to know what happened that day. I was there. I want to know who came to the decisions, who signed off on all these things. But there is no transparency at the 7th floor of the FBI. There is no transparency at the high levels of the Department of Justice. The 7th floor has refused to be transparent with the victims and the public, even after 5 years. I want to know what the underlying facts of this warrant are. The public trust will continue to be eroded for federal law enforcement until they are transparent at the highest levels of the FBI. I think as a whole, the American public trusts our everyday rank and file FBI members and our everyday Department of Justice. I'm a former prosecutor, a former district attorney. I work with federal law enforcement officials day in and day out. I trusted the men and women that I work with on a daily basis. I do not trust the level of leadership that have politicized these great organizations of American justice. I call for a full and complete transparency in this matter from the 7th floor and the highest levels of the Department of Justice. The American public demands transparency and accountability. No one is above the law. I heard that yesterday. No one is above the law, and that includes the Attorney General and the 7th floor of the FBI. Thank you, and I will be followed by Mark Wayne Mullen from Oklahoma.
Thank you, guys. As stated, I'm Mark Wayne Mullen from Oklahoma, and I want to focus in on remarks that Attorney General Garland said yesterday, trying to convince the American people that we should trust him, which he did brag about his guys out in the field, and I believe we should brag about the guys in the field. But when you start talking about his level, you start talking about Director Wray's level, where has the trust came from? What has caused him to think that the American people should trust him? Is it the way that they handled Hillary Clinton's case with her emails? Is it the Russia collusion that the FBI handed the American people? Is it the way that they have targeted Trump, President Trump, from day one? Where is the leadership of the Attorney General Garland getting the idea that the American people should trust him? Where is it Director Wray thinks that the 7th floor of the Hoover Building has earned the trust of the American people? The American people know that President Trump has been targeted from day one of his presidency by the FBI. So where is it that they've earned that trust? I don't know. Attorney Garland goes out and says that no one is above the law. I agree with that statement. No one is. That includes you, Attorney General Garland. That includes you, Director Wray. And I'm here to tell you, if the Democrats don't hold you accountable for your actions, the Republican Party will. With that, I'll go to Rick Crawford.
Rick Crawford, represent 1st District of Arkansas, former military bomb tech, serve on the Intelligence Committee. I want to associate myself with the comments of my colleagues, but you know, this committee, you see a diverse background of experience, but the one thing that we all have in common is that we were hired by the people that we represent to provide oversight and transparency for the agencies of the federal government. As was indicated earlier, this is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. These individuals, whatever agency they work in, they work for the people that hired us. It's our job to oversee these agencies. And when we make requests repeatedly of agencies to bring forth documents that we're entitled to see on behalf of the people that hired us to be here, it's a slap in the face to the American people. This is why you see the erosion of trust. And to the point that they've made, look, we all have occasion to interact with FBI field offices, whether that be in Little Rock, Arkansas, Jackson, Mississippi, Salt Lake City, Utah, Tulsa, Oklahoma. It doesn't matter. We all interact with these federal agencies, and we have, some more than others, have interacted with the FBI. And to those individuals who work in those field offices, you know, God bless you. Every day you're involved in exercising on behalf of the American people that degree of fidelity, bravery, and integrity that you swore to. The problem is not with you. The problem is with, as was indicated here, the 7th floor of the Hoover Building. Your leadership is failing you, and it's failing the American people. And it's brought us to this point now where we see our phones have been blown up by our constituents, likening what we're seeing today to what is seen in third world countries. and this is not something we can allow to stand. I'm pleased to introduce my colleague from Utah, Chris Stewart.
Chris Stewart from Utah. Much that is necessary to be said is already said here, so I'm going to be very brief and just a couple personal observations. As a former Air Force pilot, I've spent a lot of time around the world. I believe the United States has a truly unique, a truly extraordinary responsibility to the rest of the world. Whether we like it or not, they look to us as an example of how they want to be able to live their lives. And part of that, I believe a big part of that, is this idea that people in the United States are treated equally. The people around the world want to live under an American FBI and their leadership, not an American KGB, or some of the nefarious innuendos that would come with living under an organization or a government that treats people differently. But the perception is now that that happens, that the Department of Justice and the FBI has chosen a team, and that they're working for that team now against the interest of other Americans. And Christopher Wray, I would say to you personally, you are in the middle of a crisis of leadership. You have to assure the American people that you are working for all of us, not for just some of us. You took an extraordinary step yesterday, something that, to my knowledge, has never happened in our history. If that was essential, then you have to tell the American people, and you have to tell them now. You can't hide behind the explanation of it's an ongoing investigation. If you did what you did this week and there was a necessity for it, then tell the American people why. They deserve to know. And until you do that, then you have to recognize that this crisis of faith is going to continue under your leadership and under the leadership of our Attorney General. That's why we're here. We just want the American people to know. Tell us why you did this. And with that, I'll yield back to our ranking member.
Thank you, Chris. Yes.
Does anybody among the committee Republicans have a concern with unsecured classified information potentially being in a storage area in Florida? Anybody have a concern with that?
Certainly. The issue of the handling of classified information is an issue that, of course, our committee deals with and that we're very concerned with. However, the issue of classified information and the tactics that are used in this instance are the ones that we're very concerned about. There were a number of options that were available to the Attorney General and the Director of the FBI besides raiding Mar-a-Lago, the former president's home, and spending 9 hours there, including going to court and requesting that the original subpoena be enforced. There were a number of court actions and steps that could have been done that would not have resulted in agents being in Mar-a-Lago for 9 hours. Now, the one thing that we all know is Donald Trump has more classified information in his head than he does in his desk. But yet they claim that there was an immediate need to enter his residence, and our committee deals with intelligence and national security issues, so we are demanding disclosure to this committee what was the national security basis that was an apparent immediate threat requiring this action opposed to all the other actions that they could have taken. Yes.
If there were nuclear documents in that, is that justified, the FBI going to get it? And also you say that Donald Trump has more classified information in his head. The Mar-a-Lago is also a public club, so should those documents be in that space written down for perhaps people to access?
So this is a great question. I'm glad that you asked it. So I have served on the Strategic Forces Subcommittee in the Armed Services Committee for 20 years, including being its chair and ranking member. It depends on what the nuclear information is. You can say nuclear weapons, but there are things that are highly, highly classified. There's things that are not extremely classified, but are nonetheless classified. The other aspect with respect to access is we don't know what those documents are. I mean, I'm asking the same question you are. Attorney General Garland, Director Wray, If these things rise to the level of national security threats, to which there's an immediate need to enter the residence of a former president, perhaps future candidate of president, the person who is, has run against Garland's boss, that should have a higher level of scrutiny, right? But just tell us. I'm asking the same questions you are, and if there are rational answers for it, then he needs to come to this committee, disclose what the classified information is, disclose what the national security threat is, so that we know. I'm going to pause for a second. Anybody else want to answer?
I just want to say, we've been here before. I remember getting questions on the Russia collusion for years. And so before you jump to conclusions and just accept information from sources who are not the Attorney General, who are not the Director of the FBI, let's see what the facts are. That's why transparency is key here. But many of you are the same reporters that asked us questions on Russia collusion, and look how that fell apart. I think it's really... We are calling for the facts. Let me answer your...
Search on Monday, Republicans came out and made a lot of justifications that this was completely simply they planted information also.
And look what our House Republican leader said. Preserve your documents. That's about finding the facts. Each of us said we want answers and transparency, and the American people, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, and I call on our House Democrat colleagues, we deserve answers. We have oversight over these agencies on behalf of the American people. That is what we are calling for today. So before you jump to conclusions, we are asking for the answers and the facts.
Let me say something on that too, if I could. I think it's naive to assume that the American people would not wonder, is this political? Of course they're going to wonder that. Look what's happened over the last 5 years. And look at the premise of most of your questions. Was it nuclear? Was it, heck, maybe it was aliens? That's the point. We don't know. We're asking them to tell us. And until they tell us, then we're going to have questions like this, and the presumption is going to be that it is political. There's a way to depoliticize this. Give us the information.
And when you ask the question, you're asking the question based on things that you have seen reported. And let's go back to the Russian collusion narrative and how that was carried out. Fusion GPS, etc. If we can get one media outlet to make a statement and an accusation, whether it's true or false, in that case false, then every other media outlet started running with it. Maybe not every other, but started running with it. It's been reported. It's been reported. That's what America sees, and that's the problem. And that's why we are standing here today, not accusing anyone of anything, but wanting answers. Wanting answers, same questions you have. But keep in mind how they've proven the narrative and the way they like to work things.
We have one more, and then I'm going to get to
I want to point out the double standard here, too. We saw that this media frenzy about supposedly classified information. Where was this same media frenzy when there was 33,000 classified emails on a server in a bathroom with Hillary Clinton? Why didn't they raid that bathroom? Why did they work with her to find out a time, a date, and what documents they could and couldn't see? Did they do the same thing here with Trump, with President Trump? All we're saying is, was it treated the same? Was the scrutiny level the same? Right now, it doesn't appear that it was. As Ranking Member Turner said, what was your options? Did you eliminate all your options? Because you sure gave Hillary Clinton all her options when it came to classified information on an email. If it's everybody is treated equal, then good on you. If not, then you have a lot of answers to answer for, or a lot of questions to answer.
One thing we know is there's no question that the Attorney General ordered this raid upon President Biden's political rival, and that certainly rises to a higher level of scrutiny and certainly the need for oversight. Yes?
Some of your colleagues have attacked law enforcement in the days following the news of the search, and they said they are calling to destroy or defund the FBI. I'm wondering if you guys condemn that rhetoric coming from some of your...
So we support our men and women in uniform who are in law enforcement, and we request that anybody who's made outrageous statements like that you question them and not us, because everybody up here has made certainly very substantive conversations.
Congressman?
Yes.
Given that we don't know anything, we're all asking similar questions here.
Right.
You've spent a lot of time around classified information, highly classified information. Is there a situation would warrant the FBI going into Trump's residence to obtain records?
I got to say, you are very correct. So I've dealt with classified information in my several decades of being here, including nuclear issues of classified information. I've been in the Oval Office talking to President Trump about issues of that were nuclear related. It would be very, very narrow of anything that just has the umbrella of nuclear weapons in it that would rise to the level of an immediate national security threat.
Nuclear weapons, just broadly speaking, is there any?
Well, I think that's why we're asking the question. I mean, there are a number of things that that they could show us, and I don't want to speculate on what those would be, that would obviously rise to the level of maybe you didn't have any options. But I'd be very, very, very surprised as to what those are, considering the breadth of what they could have done besides this, including going to court, trying to enforce the subpoena, demanding that the documents be produced in court, besides going into his residence and spending 9 hours. It would be, and again, also knowing that the president's deal, except in the Situation Room, largely with policy issues, it would be highly unusual for a president to have anything, even in the Oval Office, that rises to the level of an imminent national security threat. Yes.
On the affidavit, I know that's not part of what's expected to be released. Is that something that you would want to be sort of publicly released, or do you kind of want the committee?
It should be released to us, and it should be released to Congress. It depends on what's in it, right? But we have demanded it be released to us, and certainly there are other committees have joint jurisdiction that it should be released to also.
Speaking
Last
of the
question.
affidavit,
Last question. Yes, I'm back.
I'm wondering, can you think of a reason that former President Trump or any past president would need to keep classified information like that about possible nuclear weapons?
Well, again, we don't know. We don't know that it's true that he has classified information, or what it is, or that it was about nuclear weapons. I can tell you that there are a number of things that are classified that fall under the umbrella of nuclear weapons, but that are not necessarily things that are truly classified. And many of them you can find on your own phone as we stand here. And if they fall within that category, they're not an imminent national security threat that would rise to the level of you have to raid Donald Trump's home and spend 9 hours there. I'm going to close with asking if there's anybody else who wants any closing comments or any additional statements. Great. Thank you very much.